Is Enzo Fernandez the best budget midfielder in the game, and should we be prioritising Trent or Isak for our FPL teams this week? We'll be discussing all of that in today's Game Week 16 top transfers. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button for daily fancy content. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So Enzo Fernandez is currently one of the most bought players going into Game Week 16 off the back of 5 attacking returns in the last 5 league matches. And I totally understand the hype for him right now. Being priced at 5 million, a lot of managers looking to maybe downgrade someone like a Mbeumo to a cheaper alternative. While previously we've had people like Dibbling at Southampton, we've had Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa. A lot of people are starting to look for that next shiny toy at this price range, and right now that is going to be Enzo Fernandez. So we need to understand whether he is actually a good option for our FPL teams in Game Week 16. So take a look at some of the good things about Enzo first and foremost. Now, we have to note that at the start of the season under Maresca, we were seeing either Enzo in and out of the team and featuring more in the Conference League squad, or playing in a deep line position or a number 10. Not the position that Enzo Fernandez thrives in. What we're seeing right now over the last 5 game weeks is actually a Chelsea team that is built more to actually play around Enzo's strengths. So we're either seeing him alongside a Caicedo or a Lavia in a double pivot, with then a right back inverting into midfield, which then allows Enzo to pick the ball up deep, do his dictating of the game, and then progress into the final third off the ball, making those runs like we saw against Spurs. And that's been reflected in his underlying numbers over the last 5 league matches. 0.22 expected goals per 90 and 0.36 expected assists per 90. So as I mentioned, getting the ball deep, playing those long balls that he loves, and then progressing up into the final third without the ball. That is how you get the best out of Enzo Fernandez, and we are starting to see that. With those underlying numbers right now, yes, they are incredible, 0.5 XG per 90, but we need to obviously understand the value of this player. He's only 5 million, so we're not asking him to score and assist every single week. That'd be great, but we need to dampen our expectations a little bit with Enzo. These underlying numbers are very, very promising. Now, the other things that I always want to tick off when I'm buying a player at this price point, because if we can get somebody who's putting up good numbers, that's a great thing. Can we get guaranteed minutes? Well, he's played 90 minutes in the last 4 league matches. He's now the captain of Chelsea whilst Reece James is injured. That's great. And importantly as well, he is taking set pieces in this team. He takes a lot of corners. He takes indirect free kicks at times. And if Cole Palmer is not on the field, I feel like Enzo would definitely have a shout of taking a penalty in this team. And also, one of the biggest things as well are the fixtures long-term are just incredible. We spoke about this with Cole Palmer, and Enzo obviously falls into the same bracket with these fixtures. Brentford at home to kick things off in Game Week 16. Then away against Everton could be deemed a bit more of a trickier fixture. Then Fulham, Ipswich, Palace and Bournemouth. Now again, we're not buying this player, we shouldn't be buying Enzo, to be a starter in your team every single week. I don't think that is the right way to structure your team, relying on Enzo. But if you can bring him in as maybe part of a midfield rotation or a forward rotation and play him in these favourable home games, and then if you need to play him away against Ipswich, then that is absolutely fine. Now, of course, there are some problems. Firstly, could we see Maresca slightly change up the system? Maresca has been fantastic this year in changing things up, whether at the start of the game or midway through a game. We saw Lavia come off against Spurs. I don't think that'll be necessarily as much of a case with Enzo, but we will see times potentially where Gusto will play at right back, and then we'll see Lavia and Caicedo play as a double pivot with Cole Palmer as the 10. That definitely could happen. I think a lot of people have a bad perception of Caicedo and Lavia, where they think they are just 2 defensive midfielders who are there for defensive reasons. But Lavia is one of the most press-resistant players in the league, so we need to kind of dispel that defensive nature of these two. These two, against teams who are going to be pressing high, are going to be unbelievable because of their press resistance. So there will be times where these two get played, but I think over the long term, Enzo is locked into this Chelsea team. He's progressed up from that Conference League squad, and I do think at 5 million, he is now the best cheap midfielder in the game, between 4.5 million all the way up to 6 million. I really do feel that is the case. I think he now maybe jumps above Morgan Rogers just because of that Champions League involvement for them, and the guys play so many minutes. I could see rotation along the way. So Enzo for me is a fantastic buy for your teams. And if you look at the free funds, I think Mbeumo down to Enzo to then maybe allow you to buy Trent or Alexander Isak is a bit of a no-brainer going into game week 16. So I spoke about how Enzo might enable you to bring in a premium forward from game week 16 onwards, and I really do think the two that we need to actually talk about are going to be Nicholas Jackson at 8.2 million and the man that I've mentioned already, Alexander Isak at 8.6 million. Now, as of right now, the bandwagon is going to be Alexander Isak. So my job right now is to basically understand whether he is a worthy bandwagon and we should all be buying him, or could Nicholas Jackson be offering a nice alternative, or neither. So first up, we need to take a look at the underlying numbers for both of these. Now, in terms of goal output, you can see Jackson leading the way, highlighted at 0.65 per 90, and in terms of expected goals, 0.59. But I would like to say that both of these underlying numbers for both players are good, and I would expect both of them to actually improve over this fixture run that we do have, because they are both fantastic for their teams. In terms of shots, nothing that is actually negative about either. Both getting shots in the box, 2.67 for Jackson, 2.38. That's the important thing, because obviously Isak scored that wonder goal against Liverpool, but that isn't actually his forte. He does get in around the box, which is important to note. And in terms of creative for both of these players, I actually look at these both and think they have real well-rounded attributes as an FPL forward. I think about Jackson linking up in previous season under Pochettino, but we are still seeing that at times in this Maresca team. And Alexander Isak has always had that in his locker, drifting off that left-hand side, putting in incredible balls in the box, or just linking up through balls with the team. So I think the beauty of both of these is they can actually offer different avenues to points. The big factor that does lean towards Alexander Isak are penalties. Nicholas Jackson, as we know, doesn't take penalties in this Chelsea team. Cole Palmer has that responsibility. So a big thing that we need to remember is that Alexander Isak is a penalty taker and he's putting up good numbers. The other thing that we need to note, of course, is the fact that Callum Wilson has now been ruled out for the foreseeable future. So whereas before, I think we were slightly concerned about Callum Wilson taking some minutes off Alexander Isak and maybe pushing out to the left-hand side, or just a general rest, that will not be the case now, well, from Wilson at least, who has been ruled out for the foreseeable. Jackson, on the other hand, has been, unfortunately, one of those players that's been getting early substitutes. I don't doubt his starting. I think he will start over most of these games, but we are seeing Nkunku come on around the 75th minute. So when we do think about it, over the next 3 weeks, if we would see Nicholas Jackson play 75, 75, 75, or Alexander Isak 90, 90, 90, and on penalties, I know exactly the player that I would want to bring into my team. And, of course, Jackson being on 4 yellow cards, 1 away from a ban. If he was to get a yellow against Brentford, he'd then be missing the Everton game. And then what's to say if Nkunku wasn't to play well against Everton, he might also start the Fulham game. Now, in terms of the fixtures, is there any team that actually has more of a priority? Well, Newcastle have no cup involvement in terms of Europa League or Champions League, which is a bonus. Chelsea do have the Conference League, but of course, basically play a different team in that. So I wouldn't be worried about any of these Chelsea players that do play in the Premier League team, basically. And I would argue both of these fixtures are equal. Game week 16, both are brilliant. I can't really split them in terms of the defences that they're playing up against. Both away against game week 17, both with favourable, I would say, game week 18 fixtures where they could score goals. So I would argue that Chelsea's probably just leans a bit more in the favour, and I think I can trust this Chelsea attack more than that of Newcastle, because Newcastle have been very much Jekyll and Hyde. But with all that said, with the numbers that we're seeing with Isak, being a penalty taker, guaranteed game time, talisman in that Newcastle team, yes, I don't know what I'm getting from Newcastle each and every week, but I think if you have the money available and you can get to Isak this week, I think he is one of the priority transfers for your team. I think he's brilliant for 16, brilliant for 18, even 19 and 20. With those teams away who are really struggling right now, would not be surprised if Isak was to score in these games. So Isak's the pick for me. I think he's quite clearly better than Nicholas Jackson, and I hopefully will be bringing him into my team as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So outside of Enzo Fernandez and Alexander Isak, the other big transfer that a lot of managers are making are going to be in these premium defenders. Now, I really want to, in this part of the video, just talk about who is the best Arsenal pick, who is the best Liverpool pick, and should we be prioritising any of these in our team? So At Arsenal right now, we've got Timber and Saliba. At the time of recording, Gabriel has missed their Champions League game, and we have no idea whether he is going to be available for this weekend. Some people think it could be concussion, therefore he has to serve 10 days before he's allowed to be available. But the fact he hasn't featured since that game against West Ham does make me think, even if he is available, is he actually going to be match fit to play this Everton game? So we do need to monitor that. And remember, the deadline is 1:30. Arsenal kick off at 3 p.m. So we might get some news about Gabriel in the morning, whether he has travelled with the squad or not. In terms of Liverpool right now, I haven't included Robertson because we don't know Tsimikas' return. And I do think once Tsimikas returns to the squad, he is going to take minutes away from Robertson. So the first question I need to ask myself is Timber or Saliba the better pick in this Arsenal team? We got the underlying numbers here for both of those players, and you can see in terms of XG per 90, Timber doesn't really offer that much. I know he scored that goal in a couple of weeks ago, but Saliba is the outstanding pick if we are comparing them. But let's not beat around the bush here. It's not like Saliba is going to be scoring each and every game week based on the numbers that we're looking at here. The other thing that always draws my attention is going to be the bonus points per 90. How does that player do? And Saliba isn't putting up incredible numbers, but Timber isn't doing much, 0.17 per 90. Now, of course, Timber had his own slight concern, but he was on the bench in the Champions League game, and I do think he will come back in for the Premier League match in game week 16. And with the price difference between the two, Timber at 5.6, Saliba at 6.1 million, I think it's very much a case of, if I'm looking at a player for the next 15 game weeks, Saliba is the man I think he is worth paying the slightly more for. However, with Ben White still going to be out for up to 4 weeks, if you want to go for Timber, and remember there's lots of fixtures over this festive period, I think he plays the majority of these fixtures over the festive period. Yes, he has come back from a long-term injury, but he's proved his fitness, and I think Arteta really does rate Timber. So for me, if I was buying, I think Timber still will be the pick over Saliba. Save the money and invest that elsewhere. The big discussion for me is going to be Van Dijk versus Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I really don't think Trent has actually offered value at 7 million. And I think now we're all starting to think to ourselves, well, the fixtures are turning good. We have to buy Trent because he will eventually deliver. So when we take a look at the numbers for Trent, firstly, 1.21 shots per 90, but only 0.19 of those on target. And literally all of them are coming from outside the box, whether it be open play or from set pieces. So even though he's taking a lot of shots, if he's only getting 0.19 on target per 90, then he literally can't really score many goals at all. So I don't think his goal scoring is really a factor this season. In terms of the attempted assists, he still is being a creative force in this Liverpool team. 2.33 per 90, and expected assists of 0.32 per 90. Basically the best of all defenders in the league this season. And in terms of the bonus points, even though he hasn't really been delivering in terms of attack and returns, still 0.74 bonus per 90. And you basically can guarantee if Liverpool were to keep a clean sheet and Trent pick up an assist, he is going to be absolutely in the bonus points, which is the big factor that we need to remember here, because Virgil van Dijk, not so much. I know he has had plenty of chances from set pieces, and I do think he will score goals, but I still don't think he's going to be scoring each and every week, and I don't think he has the same attacking threat as that of Arsenal. Arsenal just proved from set pieces they are absolutely dominant. So I think it's very much a case of, I think Trent is the outstanding pick of the two. I think his underlying numbers do justify that. But at 7 million, if you can go down to Virgil van Dijk and it allows you to get to another player that you want to consider, I still think Van Dijk is perfectly fine. What is to say that Trent coming back from injury doesn't at times get rotated over this period where we see a Quansah play at right back, or we see Conor Bradley return in a few weeks' time and play right back as well. So to conclude with the Liverpool, I think it's a case of, if you can get to Trent and it doesn't hinder the rest of your team, get it done. I think he's a great pick. But I would not be stressing. If you have to take a -4 to get to Trent, Virgil van Dijk is a perfectly fine alternative for your teams. Now, in terms of the fixtures, I don't think these are great defensive fixtures for Liverpool. Fulham, I think, is okay. Spurs away, I never fancy a clean sheet for any team that goes away to Spurs, let alone the result I can never predict. Leicester at home looks great. West Ham away, don't really know what we're getting from them. Could be a new manager. Man United at home is okay. Forest away is tricky. In terms of Arsenal, I feel more confident in the Arsenal defence. Everton at home feels great. Ipswich at home feels great. But Brentford away and Brighton away are tricky games. So I don't think the defences are as essential as what we're deeming, but I feel like over the next 3 game weeks, we could easily see 3 clean sheets for both teams. And then it really starts to be a bit of FOMO that you haven't jumped on one of them. So to conclude, I think in terms of the top transfers this week, I think Timber is a fantastic buy for your teams. If you can get there, I think it's great if it opens up other avenues because he is basically 1 million cheaper than people like Van Dijk and Trent. At Liverpool, if you can get to Trent, I would do it. But I'm still not completely sold that he is worth the 7 million. And if you want to go down to Virgil van Dijk, I think he's absolutely fine for your teams. And you at least know you're getting guaranteed game time in that Liverpool defence. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I know it's a very, very tricky subject. Now, the final bit that I want to quickly cover for Game Week 16 top transfers, we're going to be some Bryan Mbeumo replacements. Now, as I spoke about, Enzo, I think, is a brilliant budget pick. He would be my standout pick, and he is the cheapest of the bunch that we have on this list here. So all the way down to Enzo, I'm going to keep it very simple, is a brilliant move for your teams. But I'm also conscious that some managers actually want to bring in a player that is going to be starting for them each and every game week, and they want it to be a similar price to that of Mbeumo. Hence why we got a load of players on the screen. So I want to quickly caveat this by saying that I don't think Mbeumo is a desperate sell. I do think if you're just in a position where you're selling him for the sake of selling him, I don't think you need to. I'd only be selling him if you're downgrading him to enable another move for your team, like bringing in an Isak or a Trent, or you are just so compelled to bring in a player on this list that you think is going to benefit you long term. It goes without saying, if you don't have Palmer, you don't have Saka, you don't have Salah, and you can get Mbeumo to one of those, just get it done. But I wouldn't be surprised if Brentford score a few goals against Chelsea this week. They've got a brilliant record at Stamford Bridge, and Brentford offensively, I know they're terrible away from home this season, but I still think they have the firepower against this very, very suspect Chelsea defence. So, of course, we got a lot of numbers here, so I'm just going to try and break down the highlights that we need to look at. So, at the top is Anthony Gordon. I think the big thing we need to ask ourselves is it worth just doing Mbeumo to Gordon if you can't get to Alexander Isak and cover yourself off of this Newcastle attack? Because these are the current team's top 3 over the next 6 game weeks. Newcastle are top of the ticker. We've discussed this with Alexander Isak. And when we look at Gordon's numbers here, he's played 14 games, XG per 90 of 0.44, expected assists of 0.22, really good underlying numbers for him. And again, I think with Gordon, we know we're getting FPL pedigree. The only problem with him is that we've seen at times him be pushed out to the right-hand side and Harvey Barnes off the left. I don't like Gordon off that right-hand side. I think it does diminish his potential attacker returns. And of course, we've also seen the combination of Joe Linton and Willock play on that left-hand side of attack. So I think Gordon's minutes are absolutely fine, but it's where he plays in that team which is my major concern. And the only reason why I'm not tempted to bring in Gordon into our teams, but in terms of underlying numbers, they are fantastic. Now, Semenyo's been the talk of the town. He's been really poor recently. The numbers are good in terms of XG and expected assists. The big problem for me is everyone looks at the total shots, 4.3 per 90, great. But you can see here, on target, 0.95. So it's all well and good getting the shots off, but if you're getting less than 1 on target per game, then you basically can't score more than 1 goal per game. So I think his ceiling is actually really low, even though a lot of us look at these numbers and think straight away, oh my God, he's getting loads of shots. I would dampen those expectations, in particular with Semenyo. And in terms of the fixtures, still have good home games, but I wouldn't be rushing to buy Semenyo at all. The one that's really interesting is Eze. A lot of people have mixed feelings with Eze. I was one of those that had him at the start of the season and he did not deliver. Now, his shot volume's always good, slightly better in terms of the on-target. XG is great, expected assists are good. We've seen a slight improvement in Crystal Palace in terms of results recently and performances. And the fixtures coming up, I think it's not the time to buy him right now, away against Brighton, then at home against Arsenal. But I think game week 18 onwards, that is the time maybe to jump in on Eze. So he is a waiting to see for now. In terms of Mitoma, I never feel like he has got a big haul in him, but I've been proven wrong this season with a couple of double-digit returns. In terms of Brighton's fixtures, Palace, West Ham, Brentford, I think they're okay. But if you already have João Pedro in the team, I wouldn't be doubling up on Mitoma, and I don't feel like he is the best on this list. A few other ones that we need to talk about. Ahmad, for me, I just can't trust the Man United team and any guaranteed minutes for him. I think 1 week he plays wing back, the next he plays as a 10, the next he's on a bench. I would much rather go for Enzo over Ahmad, and controversially, I'd rather go for Enzo over Morgan Rogers. Last few on this list here. Kudus, really interesting. 0.39 expected goals per 90, 0.12 creativity, good shot volume, plenty on target. West Ham fixtures aren't too bad. Bournemouth, Brighton, Southampton in the next 3. Then a little bit more difficult against Liverpool and City. The problem, of course, we don't know what's happening with Lopetegui, and we could see a manager change up, and then that could be good or bad for him. So I think that is a wait and see. Gibbs White, interestingly, has long-term good fixtures. Numbers aren't amazing, though. I'd avoid Gibbs White. And then Jarrod Bowen, same principle. I think he is in the same bracket as Anthony Gordon in terms of an FPL option, but you have no idea what you are getting with Bowen and Lopetegui. So for that reason, I probably would prioritise Gordon over Bowen. So to conclude, I think of the premiums, Gordon is the one. I think I'll just go for him and hope that he does play on the left. In terms of the cheapies, it's Enzo. As a differential in your teams, I think it would be Kudus rather than Jarrod Bowen. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 16 top transfers. A little bit different this week. Hopefully you did enjoy the format. Let me know in the comment section if you did. Of course, we have plenty to talk about going into this week. So as always, if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, as we'll be covering off all of those hot topics tomorrow. And importantly, my team selection, as we have lots to do with my team. Have an amazing day, guys. Take care. Any questions, put them in the comment section. Drop a like, and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.